What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another week here on the Patterson Report podcast. I'm Brandon. That's Ryan. And this time last year, I feel like we were sitting here on this very podcast in the midst of one of Howie's greatest virtuoso performances, and we were looking at this roster and we were going, "Damn, who let who let a team get put together like this? Who let the Eagles, who are already so talented?" go out and get Saquon Barkley. We didn't know who Zach Baum was going to be yet. Mekhi Becton was, high upside, could be great. Jeff Stoutland, university candidate. And it just felt like, at this time last year, we were like, God, this team is loaded. It's the best team in football. We're going to go make a run. And we did. And I think Howie tried to warn people that, hey, this year isn't going to be that, and myself included at times have forgotten that message a bit. This Eagles free agency has been a little different, to say the least.
Yeah, it's been a little different. I mean, a lot of pieces have been lost. Some have been surprises. Some have not been surprises. Everyone knew Milton Williams was going to walk out the door. Josh Sweat was going to walk out the door. Mekhi Becton's probably going to walk out the door. I mean, Adam Schefter hinted at it,
Yeah.
on Pat McAfee's show. But we didn't expect Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. So that one was kind of a shock. We expected Slay. We expected Bradbury.
Yeah.
There
CJ
was
was the
one.
big one.
Yeah, that was a shocker to, I think, most of the fan base, where they started to question things. That's where all the tweets came up, where they're like, "Are we sure?"
Yeah. And it's because the other ones, like, as much as, I mean, if you're an educated Eagle fan, like, you love Milton Williams. He vastly outperformed what you expected from him, but we were never going to pay him nine figures. Just wasn't going to happen. Josh Sweat had a really good overall Eagle career, top 10 in franchise history in sacks. But, he was always a great year followed by a down year. You weren't going to pay him 80 something million. Like, those were sound football moves that a contending team shouldn't have done. When you look at the Chauncey Gardner Johnson thing, there's no immediate cap relief this year. Now that down the line, it makes all the sense in the world. You don't necessarily have that option in house. The fans don't think, and the return wasn't that great. So it's an unusual Howie deal where he didn't pull the wool over anybody's eyes or anything like that.
No, but I mean, how he loves these reclamation projects. We saw it with Becton last year,
Yeah.
and now Green's another one. So, uh, I think Stoutland can kind of fix him, but there's a lot of gaps in the game.
I would have taken a flyer on Green. Like that part, look, if Jeff Stoutland tells me, go get this guy, I can fix him, that's all I need to hear. Like I would have taken a prove it deal on Green. I think where it's a little bit sour for me is that it cost you a top 10 safety in football, probably pretty safely, you can say. TJ fits in that category. I mean, that's where it stings a little bit, is what we had to give up to get him.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just for cap purposes. That's the reason we traded him. I mean, that's the reason they said, and that's the reason we might let Dallas Goedert walk or trade him eventually.
Yeah, you can't. I don't think they can let Goedert walk. He's not a.
He's gonna get traded if he leaves.
Yeah, they're hoping to get a fourth, and so far, I don't think anybody's given them that. Unless we're really in cap hell, which I know this year we're not. I think we're 21 under the cap. I mean, I wouldn't let Goedert go for just anything. I mean, if we can get a fourth, that makes sense. I think that's great. Howie does some great work in the mid rounds, but like a fifth or sixth rounder, I'm not letting Dallas walk out the door for that.
I mean, this is all setting up for the future. I mean, you got to project out. You have the Jalen Carter contract coming. I mean, I know it's a while from now, but Coop and Q are going to need deals. Like Reed Blankenship's going to need a new deal. You don't want him to walk after Chauncey Gardner-Johnson just got traded.
I think Reed gets done this year.
I think he does too. I mean, Cam Jurgens is another one you want to get done. Like there's a couple for the Eagles that you have to get done. So you're going to stockpile these draft picks, extend the core, and try to compete again.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. I'm not saying re-signing Dallas Goedert's the answer either.
No.
But short of looking at 2025 as a complete push, I would consider keeping him around in 25 if you're not able to get a fourth or better. And then if he walks next year, he walks, and it sucks. But I would argue a season of Dallas Goedert is more valuable than the potential of what a fifth or sixth rounder could turn into.
Yeah, and I agree. It's just, it stinks to watch these guys leave. Like, what's going to happen. And, there might be a surprise one or two more coming up. Who knows? Because that's just how Howie operates. Because, he's probably fishing around in the trade market. That's what Howie does to not affect the comp picks. All the signings he's made so far have not even touched the comp picks that, he's going to get from Milton Williams and those guys. So it's one of those things where you gotta take the high upside swings, because you're not going to be able to go out and spend on a guy like a Josh Sweat type anymore.
Yeah.
Because
I think even though we have the cap this year, like you brought up a good point about the comp picks and how much Howie loves those. And I think he does great work in the middle round. So I love the comp picks too. I don't think cap space is going to be the thing that keeps us from taking big swings. I don't think Howie's willing to sign a guy who's going to cost him a comp pick.
I think this free agency wasn't perhaps loaded. I think Howie's doing the right thing. I mean, there's a couple guys that I liked a little bit that landed on different teams, but it's just one of those things where I'm okay with a Josh Uche. I'm okay with a Dory Jackson, kind of. I mean, he visited back in the day.
I mean, we're paying him like 1.5. I'm not sweating that one too much.
No,
that room needed a veteran so bad.
Yeah. I mean, these guys have shown flashes, over the years. I mean, nothing really that recent. I mean, Uche a couple of years back, I believe it was 2 years ago, he had 11.5 sacks.
I think he can be a stud. Like, obviously, the only thing that gives me concern with him is I think we have the best defensive coordinator in football. I think the second best DC in football worked for the Kansas City Chiefs. And the fact that Spags benched this guy does carry some weight to it.
That is true. And it was 2 years ago with the 11.5 sacks. So he's had 2 down years since.
Yeah, 22 was his best year. I think he was with New England.
Yep, he was. And, it is tough when someone like Spags, who has the reputation, lets a guy go like that. Whereas Bond, wasn't really that highly regarded of a DC down in New Orleans, didn't really try him inside linebacker. And look what we got. But
yeah. Now, I mean, if Fangio can find a way to pull 2022 out of this guy, then it's almost a plug and play Josh Sweat replacement for. I mean, you figure he's going to be pretty close to a minimum deal, which is a stroke of genius by Howie at that point.
It's what you got to do. I mean, I'm excited for the tush push on the other side of the ball, but to get the min out of a pass rusher, and we got to talk about Bryce Huff, because that Bryce Huff deal is kind of leaving its mark a little bit on the franchise.
It probably cost you CJ, I would say, pretty comfortably.
I would agree.
If and again, if the CJ deal doesn't happen, I think it also could have potentially cost you Becton. I mean, I know you don't necessarily want to pay that guard spot because of how great the O-line is, and you have so many Pro Bowls and Hall of Famers and other places that you can kind of hide one guard spot. But if he's only going to get, from what you're seeing, like 10, probably between 10 and 15 million, maybe even a little bit on the south side of that, I would have brought Becton back at that number.
Yeah, I agree. I saw the Aaron Banks contract to Green Bay, and my first thought was, well, see you, Becton, because that was crazy money. I was upwards of 20 mil a year, and the guard market has been kind of crazy in recent memory. I mean, who was it? Robert Hunt down in Carolina got a big deal last year. He's been worth it. So
I think Becton's going to get north of 15, which is ludicrous money and not worth it to us, but good for him.
Yeah, I mean, you're paying 3 of the 5 spots in the line. Jurgens on the rookie deal, and then right guard was Becton. I mean, you're gonna sign Jurgens to a deal. I mean, you have to. I think if you had to pick between center and right guard, you have to pick Jurgens just because of what he does, how important he is for the offense.
and how unique he is. Like the whole reason you get Jurgens is because you have a guy in Jason Kelsey who's very unusual style of center play allowed you to do what you do in the run game with this, the pulling center, your center lead blocking down the field. It's easier, I think, to replace that guard spot than it is to replace a very unusual center in Cam Jurgens.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with you.
It just, I mean, look, it sucks. It's not a fun free agency this year because it felt like we no sooner won the Super Bowl and the guys who are leaving too is what stings a little bit. Like Sweat was so up and down here, took a pay cut to come back, got to roar the Super Bowl. That's awesome. You're happy for the guy. Milton Williams, mid-round pick, rotation guy, took a big step this year. You get like the guys who are leaving are guys that were a big part of why we were able to win the Super Bowl because they outperformed their deals. Like seeing Bradbury go doesn't hurt me really at all, but it's the caliber of the guys who left, and they were all like longtime Eagles too, which also sucks.
Yeah, but you know what the NFL stands for, not for long. So
yeah, I mean, I'm glad we didn't pay. I know that we had the opportunity to kind of look at maybe a reunion. I'm very glad we didn't pay Slay over $10 million for 1 year. Good for Pittsburgh. If that's a need, then go for it. He might be a good mentor for Joey Porter Jr. But I think that would have been a really horrible use of resources here in Philly.
Those memes were going crazy when Slay signed because DK Metcalf, the move.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when Slay talks about his podcast and George Pickens just, yeah. So we'll see how that situation plays out in Pittsburgh, but I'm excited for the Eagles season. I mean, the draft's coming up. You're looking around at that. Pick 32 is always a nice pick to have because it means you won it all.
Yep. There was one pick where I was really excited. Not one pick. There was a free agency where I was kind of excited about, and I think we didn't quite see it the same way. I mean, losing Kenny Gainwell is what it is. I think he's going to get a better opportunity to play in Pittsburgh. I'm a little bit surprised he only got a 1-year deal to leave. But I was pretty stoked when we got A.J. Dillon as a replacement. If he's able to stay healthy behind that line, I think he and Saquon are going to be, to a lesser extent, the Philly version of Gibbs and Montgomery. Now, obviously, Saquon clears Gibbs by a country mile. But Montgomery, and I'm not saying A.J. Dillon's David Montgomery either. I just think they can have a similar dynamic as those two.
Yeah, I mean, the quads in that backfield are insane, by the way. It is absolutely ridiculous.
The tush push is going to go for 9 yards.
I mean, if you line him and Saquon up behind Hurts in the tush push, like, go off. Like, yeah. What are you going to do to stop that? I mean, I'm okay with A.J. Dillon as a backup. Like, it's a okay signing to me. It's nothing that I'm like, okay, this is going to ruin the future of our team, or I don't like it a lot. It's just, it's okay in my eyes.
I think it's the same kind of move Howie's made all offseason. It's high upside, low floor. Like, we're not paying him much. If he can find his legs the way he did, what was it, 2 years ago in Green Bay, where he rushed for, I think, 900-something yards in a split backfield, I mean, then you're ecstatic. If he, the last 2 years, he's been injury prone. So it's tough to tell what that is. That's why we got him on such a discount. But, I mean, look, Stout is O-line. He's also a run game coordinator. So I am going to sprinkle a little bit of the faith and the magic that comes with a Stout upbringing onto A.J. Dillon as well.
Yeah, he's good in the short yard. I mean, maybe you want to take a little bit of the load off of Saquon Barkley, a little bit of the wear and tear. She's going to get older. But it's just one of those things where you can't rely on him, sort of like Gainwell you could. Like, Gainwell always made that big play. We haven't seen that out of A.J. Dillon yet. And A.J. Dillon kind of struggled running behind that Packers line, which wasn't the worst, but it also wasn't the best. So,
yeah. I don't think we don't have the numbers on Gainwell yet. I don't think. Like,
I thought it was 7.
1 year, 7 million. Yeah. So again, Eagles makes no sense to pay that. I think while Gainwell's a better runner than AJ Dillon, I think he gives you enough. I mean, look, anybody behind Saquon Barkley is going to be sufficient. Let's just call that what it is. I think
Oh no, it was 1.17 mil. I would
1 year, 1 mil.
1.7. I got that wrong. I moved the 7 up.
Man, I would have brought him back for that.
Yeah, I think it's very. I think he wanted more opportunity, and he's going to get that in Pittsburgh. He wasn't going to get that in Philadelphia. That's what that was about.
Yeah, didn't Pittsburgh? Did they get rid of Najee?
No, he's a Charger.
Yeah, so
I think he got 7 mil. I think that's where I was confusing things.
Yeah, so Gainwell could have a real shot at that'll be a true running back by committee this year then.
Him and Jaylen Warren, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
So he's going to get the step up, and maybe he gets a big payday next year if he does good behind the Steelers' offensive line, which is a little shaky, but they drafted 2 good rookies.
They also don't have a quarterback.
Yeah, that's a problem. But they'll maybe figure that one out. If not, pencil in Jackson Dart in draft night. It might be a little bit of a reach, but you have to do it. They put themselves in the spot where they have to do it. But
is there anybody else? We've seen kind of how Howie's operating. We got a tight end whose name off the top of my head, I can't remember at the moment. Is it Mitchell something? Mitchell Evans? Hunter Evans? I don't know.
Harrison Bryant.
Harrison Bryant. Wasn't even close.
Mitchell Evans plays for your Fighting Irish, buddy.
Yeah, good call.
He's still in the draft. Maybe we'll pick him.
Yeah,
never know.
Maybe.
Yeah, Harrison Bryant was an award winner in college. I mean, I was big on him. He had decent capital at the Cleveland Browns, and the Cleveland Browns just never really used him. I mean, it's not like he was terrible. Like, he wasn't really bad, but David Njoku was pretty good.
He's been buried twice. He was behind Njoku, and then he wasn't going to take touches from Bowers last year.
No, that was a really unfortunate spot when he picked it in free agency. I mean, him and Mayer would have been a nice tight end duo. I really like the signing. I liked his college tape. I thought he was a pretty good tight end. And,
See, he's not the Oakland tight end. I mean, the Vegas tight end I necessarily wanted. No. I saw that look, Brock Bowers is never going to be an Eagle, but I saw that we were poking around Michael Mayer, and that Vegas was looking to ship him off. I would have probably rather had Mayer, I think.
Yeah, but I don't think this stops you from doing that, though.
You think we get both Raider tight ends?
You could. I mean, if Goddard goes out the door.
I mean, he's a cheaper Goddard option. If not for Brock Bowers, he was absolutely the best tight end in his class.
Coming out, and then Sam Laporta smashed that, but coming out, he was the number 1 tight end prospect. You're correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's probably, if I'm looking at positions of need right now, for me personally, I still think, for me, safety jumped up to number 1. I think Sidney Brown's probably going to be all right. I do want to put some legitimate competition back there. I think this draft is deep enough in edge where if you wanted to wait on that a round or two, there's still going to be a ton of talent. So I think for me, it flipped to safety 1, edge 2. And then I would like to address tight end in the draft. There's that guy out of, Bowling Green?
Harold Vannon.
Yeah.
People are divided on him. It'll be interesting to see where he lands because he's kind of like Darnell Washington from a few years back. If you remember him, we went to the Steelers. He got day 3 draft capital. Everyone was hyping him up. Oh, he could go round 1. So it kind of feels like that similar scenario, but we'll see where Fannin goes.
If he's there, 3rd, 4th round, I would address the need there, especially if it's him.
I take the swing.
Yeah, because I don't see us spending money on those positions, but there are. I've seen drafts where Malachi Starks survives to us. I've seen drafts where he goes top 15. It seems like it's a roulette wheel on where he could possibly go. If he's there, I think it's a no-brainer, and you take him. I'm a diehard Notre Dame fan. I love Xavier Watts to pieces. Malachi Starks is the best safety in this draft.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting where mock drafts are all over the place because it's so uncertain at the top that you just don't know what's going to happen this year. Like you could probably pencil in Cam Ward at 1 and Shador at 3 with how this is all going with the Giants, not having a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And besides Travis Hunter and Mason Graham up top and Abdul Carter, of course, even with the foot. Sadly, he won't be an Eagle, but
I thought we had a prayer briefly. When the foot came out, I was like, there's no way.
I'm like, how he should do this. But anyway, besides like those guys, the next tier of guys is just a big clump of anyone could go very high. So we'll see how the draft falls. As we get closer, we'll know more. But I think we go edge because it's just so deep. You're going to get a round 1 player at 32 when there's typically not,
So you thinking edge first round?
I'm thinking edge first round because someone's going to fall. There's just too many of them,
Mm-hmm.
There's too many good ones for one not to fall. Teams are going to reach on their needs like they always do, and how we're just going to sit back and pick. I do believe if Malachi Starks is there, you say, okay, whatever edge is on the board. I don't think the edges that I want are going to be on the board anyway. So I say Malachi Starks in the first. I'm sold. I'm completely in.
Okay, but other safety but him, you're going edge.
You go, then you address safety immediately on day 2.
Well, that if he survives, then maybe you do look at Watts.
Kevin Winston, Xavier Watts. I'd be okay with either of them in round 2. So, and they're both realistic options.
Yeah, I would obviously, like I said, I would love for Xavier Watts to come play for my team again. He was a phenomenal receiver, converted safety for Notre Dame. But athletically, he's not Malachi Starks. And Starks fits a little bit more of the role that, we seem to like that safety role to play with CJ, whereas Watts is a great cover safety. He's comfortable around the line. It's not his number 1 job. I like the size of Starks a little bit better. If we need him to come up and play around support, he could. Selfishly, I would want Watts, but it's better for the Eagles. And plus, we're the Philadelphia Bulldogs at this point.
Yeah, it checks the biggest box. Being a Georgia Bulldog. Nolan Smith was at the pro day.
We just hired their assistant quarterbacks coach or something.
Yep.
It's pipeline. They're the farm system.
They're the pipeline. There's a couple of Bulldogs we could take in this draft, but the sneaky need that we didn't mention was cornerback. There's still a needed outside corner. Keely Ringo could fill that, but how much faith do you have? The interviews kind of lead on that they have more faith than what the fan base does, or what the fan base believes.
Christian Parker was really high. Was it Christian Parker? No. Who was it?
I thought it was.
It might have been Christian Parker. I could be wrong, but I thought he came out with a glowing review of what they thought of Keely.
I think you're right.
And I don't think. We both kind of agree that Adoree Jackson was just brought here as kind of as a depth piece and a veteran piece. I do not think he's considered to be the answer on the outside.
Mm-hmm. It's really tricky when you lose 2 boundary cornerbacks in one off season. Like you lost the guy that was playing all year, and you lost the guy that came in from who was really decent in relief.
I would have paid. Look, I get that we're not in spending money mode. I thought what Minnesota paid Isaiah Rodgers was doable. That's probably the one where I would have splurged a little bit and kept him in house.
I guess Ringo is really high in their board, or they have someone that they're targeting in the draft. There's a couple guys that fit Fangio's scheme. I was talking with someone with PFF in their Discord the other day, and Darian Porter, I agree, Iowa State corner would be an absolute dream. He's 6'4" and he plays in his own scheme, and he's a special teams dog. Like, it kind of feels perfect, but that's a day 2 guy to look out for. Tate Ratledge as well. You said we hired Georgia's assistant quarterback coach. Tate Ratledge is a guard, would fill the need pretty easily. We have a guy who's familiar with them, and of course, the whole team is familiar with the Georgia Bulldogs at this rate. But I think there's a lot of depth in this class at the positions of need. So
there is. If you go, I think if we go corner day 2, which I don't disagree, it's a huge need. That would signal to me that there's, I don't know. I'm looking at the other 2 needs we have, and I feel better about Keely Ringo than I do about Sidney Brown personally. And it's just such a great edge class. Unless the first round is completely bananas and Howie's looking around and there's 5 or 6 guys on the edge that he still thinks are worthwhile that he can wait on.
Down. I mean, you forgo the 5th-year option, but still, you're going to get more draft capital to maybe move up for a guy in the 3rd round or maybe even 2nd that you could get at safety. You know, maybe you have to trade up for Xavier Watts, and how he'll do that, like he did with Cooper DeJean. He sent a couple of picks out for DeJean. I forget exactly what it was, but I believe it was 2 2nd-rounders. Was it? It was one to trade down, and then just one for, I think it was day 3 picks. Look what happened.
Yeah, he could move up.
Howie has so many picks in his arsenal that he can do whatever he wants. I believe it's 11 in the next 2 first 4 rounds of the next 2 drafts. It's 11. He's 20 picks, I believe.
Yes. And
he could go crazy.
What is it? 14 of those, I think, fall in the first 4 rounds or something like that.
I thought it was 11, but it might be 14.
I think it's 14.
Maybe it's the ones that haven't been awarded yet or projected to be awarded.
Either way, he has a war chest to work with, to your point.
And he's the one that always makes moves on draft day. Like, he'll trade out a 4th-round pick. Last year, the Dolphins won at Jalen Wright. He traded out a 4th-round pick for a 3rd this year. And then I think he moved that 3rd in the Jahan Dotson trade or the Kenny Pickett trade. Or it was the
Kenny Pickett cost us a 3rd.
Yeah, that was that draft, though. So I think Jahan Dotson was this draft. But either way, the Jahan Dotson trade worked out at the end because, you know, big play in the Super Bowl. Incredible run in the playoffs. Like, it is what it is, but it's one of those things where Howie is going to be very active come draft night, and who knows what he's going to do. Like, he's so unpredictable, and he's going to be calling everybody. So who knows? You can't even rule out a move up in the 1st round potentially. If one of these pass rushers, like a premium pass rusher, starts to fall, I don't know who it would be, because obviously it's not going to be Abdul Carter. We could toss that one out right away.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
But it could be any of these other guys that if he sees fit, like a Domin Ezraku, I don't know if he's going to last at 32, but if he sees him as a highly productive pass rusher for Vic Fangio, and Vic Fangio gives a seal of approval, move up.
Yeah, no, he's shown draft day is where he's aggressive. He's pretty measured otherwise. Draft day is where you really get to see Howie be Howie, which is, it's fun to watch him work like that.
I mean, Shamar Stewart, I don't think he'd be much of a scheme fit, but it'd still be fun with his athleticism and his combine numbers. If he starts to follow, I don't think he's gonna, but
yeah,
there's a couple of guys there. And say even Malachi Starks, if Malachi Starks starts to fall, how we can go up and get him.
My Nostradamus prediction is, I think if we get to around 24, 25 and Starks is still on the board, I think you'll see Howie go up and get him.
I think he'll make a couple of calls. He'll be making calls, and
because he has the mid-round draft capital to do it.
Mm-hmm. You can't be like the Thunder and hoard it all, right?
No, although it worked out for them, they'll probably win.
It's working out for them, and they still have all their picks basically. And but it's a little different in the NFL. It feels like, but
yeah, there's no way he makes all 20 picks. There's no way he's going to bundle some of those 4s and 5s together. I think in the first couple rounds and try to pick twice in the first 3 rounds. No, you know what I mean. 4 and the 3. You know what I'm saying. Try to pick one extra.
Try to parlay some of those picks into a day 2 pick, where the upside may be higher. And if he does that and he has 4 picks in the first 3 rounds, you could address all of our needs right then and there. You get a corner, you get a safety, you get a tight end, you get an edge rusher. And
who is that corner out of Texas? It's
Jahdae Barron. He's not he's not going to be there, and he doesn't fit anyway. He's more of a nickel guy than an outside guy. So
Yeah, I guess he is
I don't
smaller.
want to move. I don't want to move Coop. That's going to be a hot topic come later in the offseason, and especially with the draft. I don't want to move Coop outside. He's just so good in the slot.
No, I'm with you. I forgot that. I'm just thinking. I knew not Kansas. I knew Texas had a corner coming out, and they were the best secondary in college football.
That is very good. They also have a safety in Andrew Makuba, and he's very good. So players to watch in the Texas secondary, but Jahdae Barron kind of feels like an overcorrection a little bit because he's kind of a slot guy. He's going to play in the slot predominantly, and he's going to go way higher than Cooper DeJean and Brian Branch did, just because Brian Branch, Cooper DeJean were slot corners. Basically, that's what they profiled as mainly, and the NFL has let them fall a little bit. And look at, they're both studs. So
true. And I'm with you. I don't want to move Coop outside. I mean, it's weird. It's part of like this thing with corners where your marquee guys play outside, and then you just kind of fit your nickel however you like, or your slot corner however you want. But Coop's a star inside. Like I don't think you need. I don't think he needs to progress and move outside. Let him be a star where he's at.
I totally agree with you there. I mean, it's just a lot of these contending teams have good slot corners. I want to see where Trent McDuffie played this year. I want to see how many slot snaps he took, because it kind of feels like all these contenders have good slot players and someone that could, maneuver around the defense and, those little things. Like Detroit's defense without Brian Branch looks way different than it does with him. And I don't want to speculate how that does with Coop, but we saw at the beginning of the season, it was a little rough with Avonte Maddox out there in the slot. And then Coop got in, and the rest is history.
Yeah, though Avonte Maddox, remember, in the Super Bowl
he did have a huge play. You can't take that away from him. You can't take away his Eagles tenure. I mean, I'm not trying to shade him. I'm just saying, Coop was the best slot defender in the NFL, and it just stinks that Avonte Maddox, despite all he's done for the Eagles, over the years, it just kind of feels like that's been kind of lost a little bit. Yeah, Trent McDuffie actually played out wide a lot. I remember he was a slot corner coming out. I had to check that one just to make sure I was, not spewing wrong information on the podcast.
No, you're good. Well, I think we pretty much covered free agency tonight, which was my goal coming into this one. Now, next week, we'll be getting actually, no, we can do one more Eagles next week, and then then the Phillies will open up. So next week we'll probably focus a little bit more on the draft. We'll hopefully have a bit of a clearer picture on what Howie's thinking. I think there'll be some more moves this week. We'll see if some positions of need get filled. But from here to the draft is going to be where you'll see the two different ways that Ryan and I view the game. I am very much the that boy nice ball watcher, and Ryan is absolutely the analytics draft board side of things. So
it's gonna be so much fun. I'm so ready. We should move that show to a Wednesday and do the one right before the draft. We can do one right before the draft. That'd be nice.
That works for me. We'll try to pick. We're not going to do another one, so we'll try to pick the Eagles, maybe their first three moves on that one or something.
I think that'll be nice to look back on, because I remember last year. It's one of those things that makes me happy thinking back on. I remember we were so high on Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, and they're both Eagles, and they both won a Super Bowl with the squad. Like, that's awesome. We didn't think Quinyon was going to fall.
No, they were both a pipe dream. You were hoping to maybe get one.
You were hoping to maybe get one, and then when you start to get both, I admittedly when I saw Howie on the phone, and it said the Eagles trade up with the Commanders, I started jumping around. I knew who it was. We knew it was going to happen. Like,
he was going to go get DeJean, which was bananas, but it brought us Super Bowl. We do not win it without those two guys. So
absolutely not. So the draft is important, and if I could go on one last little tangent here before we depart, the draft is so key. You could see with all these moves, Milton Williams was a 3rd-round pick. Josh Sweat was a 4th-round pick. We recouped those picks from them years later after getting years of production. You see these teams missing the draft. The Eagles have a lot of hits lately. Jalen Carter, the 2 corners that we just mentioned, basically the whole offensive line at this point. And you see teams like, exactly, yeah. And you see teams like the Bengals who are missing on picks. And it's kind of costing them in the long run. And now you have Jamar Chase who wants the bag, T. Higgins who wants the bag, which they rightly deserve, but the Bengals can't rely on the young talent because they haven't been drafting well. So you have to draft well, and you could easily see teams that draft well and that don't draft well. The San Francisco 49ers are my biggest example of this. You saw everyone they let go this offseason. It's because outside of Brock Purdy, they haven't generally drafted well recently. So that's just my 2 cents. The draft is the most important thing in football. And if you hit, you're going to be good for a long time because those rookie deals are so valuable.
Yeah. And Howie so far, ever since really
the Jefferson
Rager, the
Rager draft. New beast.
He's corrected beautifully and gone on an incredible heater that's kept the Eagles consistently competitive. I think he does a good job of Nick has a say, Vic has a say, Stout has a say. He listens to the people in the room, which I think is great. And I'm looking forward to another great year of team building, another great draft.
I also want to throw Jeffrey Lurie in there real quick because he lets Howie do what he needs to do. And, some of these owners, they do kind of take, partial control of the team and are in the general manager's ear. Lurie just lets Howie do whatever he wants. He fully trusts him. He probably has meals with him, once a week or once a month at this rate. Some kind of dinner.
2 Lombardis in 7 years.
Exactly. I'd invite him over for family dinner too.
Yeah, I'll let it all ride on Howie. So we'll see you next week for a little bit more Eagles draft talk, and then we'll see what Howie's got cooking for us. But in the meantime, I'm Brandon. That's Ryan. This is the Passing Report. We'll see you later.